Hey, welcome to another episode of GeekOutdoors.com. If you didn't already know, Samsung at their most recent press event actually introduced what many have been waiting for, and that is basically their foldable phone slash tablet. So this is something that has been talked about for many years. I myself have done a video about it a few years ago whenever the whole idea of wearables first started coming out with, like, screens that could actually bend, but that was actually at a smaller level. And even before that, there have been other attempts at bringing out a foldable phone. If I remember correctly, there was one from ZTE back in 2009, and even here recently there have been foldable phones, but nothing like Samsung has actually shown, because all the foldable phones before were actually two screens connected together through a hinge, whereas in this case it's actually the whole screen can be folded. And so that's why we have this whole phone slash tablet hybrid. And from the very first initial look of it, of course this is very first generation. I mean, I wasn't all that impressed. I mean, the phone itself is extremely boxy and square, which is to be expected. And whenever they do unfold it into a tablet, that did look cool. And so this really shows the potential of where we are going with this, because now that obviously the technology is a lot more mature, and most importantly, it's a lot cheaper to produce these bendable OLED type screens, whereas years ago it wasn't really possible. And it's just not OLED as well. Sony came out with their own thin type e-ink paper stuff before. If you think about the original Amazon tablets, they were on this e-ink type technology, but unfortunately that was just black and white. So this is where we're at today. And so at least for this first generation, I don't think it's going to be something that a lot of people are going to be able to purchase, because it's probably going to be extremely expensive, and it's going to be for early adopters. And as a matter of fact, if I remember correctly, I think there was a Chinese company that is already releasing the very first foldable phone slash tablet before Samsung's, and I think it's about $1,300 for that, and it didn't look all that great. And so those are my thoughts on the whole foldable phone technology. I have said this many times before, in that smartphones, to me, they're really getting boring. They're pretty much the same. And so I had stated a while back that until we get foldable phones, foldable technologies, even wearables in more than just the whole watch type form factor, then things are going to be pretty much iterative and boring for me. And so this is exciting. I know it's going to bring in a whole new wave, but as with most first generation technology, it's going to take a while to mature. Maybe this very first version, it's not going to be that great, to be honest, but then I'd say like maybe the third versions after that, they'll be really good at that point. And Samsung will be at the forefront, but obviously they won't be the only ones. I expect LG to definitely get in on it, because they also produce OLED screens as well, because they make TVs. And also, of course, Apple is going to get into the game, and Google is going to be releasing a foldable Pixel device of some sort. And so yeah, great thing that Samsung officially announced it now. We actually got to see it. Hopefully we'll get more details soon on availability, and most importantly pricing, and then also maybe some other new features that we haven't seen before, or maybe that hasn't been shown yet to the media. And so yeah, so that's the very first bit of news, a very big piece of news if you ask me. And then the second one actually concerns Linux, and something that I think most people are probably not surprised by, in the fact that pretty much if you get a brand new Apple Mac product like the MacBook Pros, and as far as I could tell, any of the other new Mac products as of 2018, you pretty much can't put Linux on it, okay? Because what they've done is they've really locked it down at a hardware level. And Microsoft started this a long time ago, and I know it wasn't just Microsoft. It's driven primarily by Microsoft, but we had Secure Boot, and I know there's advantages to it, of course. First and foremost is it does make your operating system or your machine a little bit more secure, because of the fact that it checks to make sure you have a proper operating system that's qualified for that. And then another thing is you get additional storage that you couldn't get on there before, basically high storage. And yeah, but the whole point of the whole Secure Boot thing is security, of course. At least that's what they label that as. But the downfall of that is, vendors like Microsoft, like Apple, they can exert more control over what you're able to do with the hardware that you buy. That's always been my thoughts on that, even though, with all the talk about security and so forth, I get that. But in my opinion, it's most importantly about securing their platform. Even if you buy the hardware, you don't own it. That's really what it is. And it's not just Microsoft or Apple. Obviously, all their vendors, the hardware vendors, they work along with them as well. And so for people who are putting Linux on Apple hardware, this might be not great news. But then again, I think a lot of people who are willing to go through the trouble of putting Linux on Apple hardware anyway, they probably have figured things out, or they even have a Hackintosh. And so I don't think this will be a big deterrent, but it's just a sign of more of where things are heading. And the funny thing is, I mentioned this many times before, but Microsoft seems to be the most open source friendly, specifically when it comes to Linux. And obviously, ever since they bought GitHub, which is huge with developers, open source mainly, and also proprietary. But they have a vested interest to get into open source more, whereas Apple, as usual, they don't have a vested interest to do anything that they don't want to. So they're definitely in that position. And so I've also seen this with like Chromebooks as well, although it's not as tightly controlled as the others. It's not as easy as you just popping in a Linux distro and you're good to go. There has to be some additional work. And Linux vendors, they have been doing a great job to work with this. Like whenever Secure Boot started coming out, your popular versions of Linux, Ubuntu based distros, Linux Mint, they all work fine with Secure Boot. It's just those extra steps that you have to take on the operating system that you have. And so I'm not too happy about that. But then again, once again, nothing surprising, especially coming from Apple. And we're gonna head into a world that I've also mentioned this many times before as well, in that operating systems simply will not matter in the future, because everything is going to be on the cloud. We're always connected on the internet, and so everything's going to be virtualized anyway. And so just basically just look forward to having no ownership of anything that you purchase. Period. As depressing as that sounds, that's where we're at. And so if you had any thoughts on anything that I talked about today, whether it is the Samsung Foldable Phone / tablet, or Apple locking it down to where Linux is not going to be a part of their ecosystem, be sure to leave that in the comments area below. And as always, if you did get value out of these videos, share, like, and subscribe. Hey geeks, if you are a creative geek like me and you wanted to learn how to create content on YouTube and other places on the internet, then check out my Gold Content Creators Group, where you'll get access to 30 videos plus additional content for all the creative geeks out there. And the best part of it is, all of this is free. Simply head over to the link below, check out my page, and sign up for my Gold Content Creators Group. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for checking out this episode. And as always, if you like these videos, be sure to click on the subscribe button. And for full written content, audio content, and additional geek stuff, head over to geekoutdoors.com, and I'll see you outdoors on the very next episode.